So live bait really kind of gets a bad rap. A lot of people think of it as a real one-dimensional kind of deal where you're probably rigging or you're just dragging bait below on a hook. When it comes to live bait, there's a lot of ways to play that game, and really to me it comes down to delivery of the live bait. And I'm going to show you just a couple ways in which you can deliver live bait based on the situation that's going to help you catch fish in those situations. And the first one is definitely what I've got here. I've got a bottom bouncer set up, really common, been around for a long time. You know, we'll show you what a bottom bouncer looks like, but it's just a really simple wireframe chunk of lead, and behind it you've usually got some sort of a snelled hook, or in this case I've got a Northland butterfly blade on. And really, when you've got blades on the bait, those blades spin, they attract, they bring in fish, but the live bait is what seals the deal. We've got a crawler there. It's got a harness on it, so there's two hooks buried in that crawler, and it's really nice to be able to do just like I'm doing. We're trolling up and down a break line. We've got a situation where fish are scattered along a long linear piece of structure, so that's just great because these fish up and down this shoreline break, I can go ahead and pull through them as fast as 1.5 miles per hour, and then if I see fish, kind of slow down with the trolling motor here and just really pull that bait slow out in front of their face. And like I said, the crawler is where it's at. It's what seals the deal. So that's one maybe moderate to moderate fast means of presenting live bait, somewhat similar to a crankbait where you can cover water but still have that enticement and attractive properties of the live bait. So what you see me doing now is something that's, for a lot of people when they think live bait, this is probably the most common way of live bait fishing for walleyes, and it's just simply known as rigging. And it's called that because of the way that the rig is set up, and I can show you that in a little bit. But the idea is that when we're seeing fish on the screen, and it's along somewhat of a smaller bit of area that the fish are, what we can do is we can add a little movement and enticement to the presentation by pulling this live bait really slowly through them at, you know, anywhere from 0.2, 0.5, 0.6 miles per hour. And the idea there is that there's a sinker on this system, and that gets you down to the depth you need to be. And then you've got behind that a fluorocarbon or a mono leader with a hook and a bead combination in the live bait. And in this situation, this can be for finicky walleyes. You know, this can be for fish that are in somewhat of a neutral feeding pattern, and you can see them down there. They're in a pretty good cluster, and you can really precisely put that bait right in front of their face. You can kind of drive circles around with your bow mount and really precisely put everything right up in front of them so they can really study it. Again, that's where quality live bait, good leeches, good quality crawlers make a big difference. And some people even live bait rig minnows. And so the idea is that quality live bait placed in front of neutral fish with a slight bit of motion can really otherwise entice fish that otherwise maybe you wouldn't get to bite. It can be a really productive means for catching fish, especially eater fish in a lot of systems. For other people still, live bait is all about running slip floats. And you know, this is a classic scenario where fish that are somewhat stationary can be very neutral or non-moving in a specific spot, can be targeted pretty easily. So I've got a sunken hump over there. There's kind of a nice shelf on it I can see on the electronics. I've got fish over there, and the idea is that if these fish are going to be so finicky such that I can't pull other forms of live bait through them to get them to eat, or let's say they're maybe shallow and I don't want to drive the boat over the top of them, a slip float is a perfect presentation because you can set it at the depth that you want it with that sliding stop, but then also pitch right on top of them and let the live bait do all the work. Traditionally, a lot of people really like leeches, and that leech can just kind of perform its ribbon-like dance right in front of those fish's face, and it's really hard for a walleye to resist that kind of temptation. So the cool part is that, you know, especially with walleyes, in my experience, a lot of times you can dance that bait in front of them for a little bit, give it a minute or two, but you know, oftentimes you don't need that long. And what you can really do is you can reel it up and just explore different parts of it by doing these short, quick pitches. So even though it's a fairly stationary technique, even though it's a technique for neutral or even negative fish, even slip bobbering can be done with a little bit more effectiveness, a little bit more efficiency, and really that kind of rounds out a couple great ways to present live bait. By certainly no means are those the only way to deliver, but when you're talking about live bait, pulling bottom bouncers, especially with spinners, through fish, active fish, over moderate to large areas. Then maybe rigging on slightly smaller areas where you can really pirouette and do tight turns around them is another option. And then third and lastly, throwing some slip floats on top of them. Those 3 tactics should be in every walleye angler's handbook, and I invite you to take one of them, and if you're not strong with it, go ahead and try it out this year. All of them really produce fish.